On a blazing summer afternoon, a house seemed to hold its breath, enveloped in an unusual stillness. In the heart of the kitchen, I found myself immersed in the rhythmic motion of chopping fruits, each slice bringing forth the promise of a refreshing salad, a delightful distraction from my wandering thoughts. My husband was away, as always, engrossed in work that seemed to require more of his time than our family ever did. I had become accustomed to the lengthy hours and the solitude that accompanied them. Yet, there was an unmistakable shift in the air today. Jason, my 21-year-old stepson, made an unexpected entrance into the kitchen. His presence was effortlessly relaxed, brimming with a vibrant energy that lit up the space around him. As time passed, my affection for him deepened, and I began to see him as a cherished member of my family. Yet, in recent times, I had begun to observe delicate shifts in his demeanor when he was near me, and it was increasingly difficult to overlook. "Greetings. Do you require any assistance?" he inquired, his tone relaxed but tinged with a hint of hesitation. He cast a fleeting look at the fruits I was slicing, then turned his gaze toward me, lingering for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. With a grin, I passed him a knife. "Of course. Begin your journey with the cantaloupe." He nodded and drew nearer, positioning himself beside me as he clumsily started to slice. At first, his hands held a steady resolve, but as time unfolded, I began to perceive a subtle tremor weaving through his grip. In a fleeting moment, our hands grazed as I reached for a bowl, and he paused, caught in the surprise, before swiftly retreating, murmuring an apology. "It's all good," I replied with a casual air, feigning ignorance to the tension in the air. Yet, deep within, I found myself unable to dismiss the increasing consciousness of his presence. As we talked, I noticed him sneaking looks in my direction, his gaze flitting away each time I turned to face him. Ere it lingered, a whisper in the air, a pause that danced just out of reach, a tension that stirred within me, unfamiliar and intriguing. The room seemed to shrink around them, the air growing heavy with unspoken words. As I broke the silence, I slid the finished salad onto the counter, a sense of readiness enveloping the room. Jason nodded, a faint blush creeping across his cheeks, as if he were caught in a moment of unspoken vulnerability. He paused for a heartbeat longer than required, murmuring something about needing to make a phone call before slipping out of the room. There I was, standing solitary, gazing into the vacant doorway, my thoughts swirling around the encounter, replaying it over and over in my mind. I reassured myself it was merely a fleeting instance, nothing more. Jason was youthful, perhaps a bit reserved or anxious about matters beyond his control. Yet, beneath the surface, I was aware of the truth. His glances, the accidental touches, the way his voice had wavered, it all felt like a carefully woven tapestry of moments, even if he hadn't meant for it to be so. That evening, as I settled into the couch, anticipation swirling within me for my husband's return, an unsettling sensation lingered in the air. Something had undeniably changed between Jason and me. It lingered softly, like a whisper of a shadow dancing just beyond the edge of perception. Yet it was undeniably present. Yet, despite my every effort, it remained impossible to overlook. The days that followed were peculiar, as though an unseen barrier had been established between Jason and me, yet neither of us dared to recognize it. He began to linger around the house more frequently, volunteering to assist with chores he had previously shown little interest in. In the beginning, it seemed inconsequential to me. Yet, it soon became evident that his presence was anything but coincidental. On a quiet afternoon, as I meticulously folded laundry in the living room, Jason strolled in, bringing a shift in the atmosphere. He remained quiet, simply settling onto the couch and flicking on the television. I continued my tasks, yet I sensed his gaze upon me, catching fleeting glimpses whenever he believed I was unaware. A sense of discomfort washed over me, yet I endeavored to mask it from view. "You've been busy," he remarked after a moment, his voice light, yet his gaze held a weight that was uncharacteristic for him. Simply maintaining the flow, I responded, not breaking his stare. The silence lingered, stretching out far beyond what felt natural, as he remained unresponsive. At last, I raised my gaze, and his eyes met mine with an intensity that felt electric. In his gaze, there lingered a spark, perhaps curiosity, or something more profound that stirred a sense of unease within me. As the week unfolded, I found myself drawn to the pool, seeking a moment of tranquility to refresh my thoughts. To my surprise, Jason showed up shortly after, saying he needed a respite from his studies. With a swift motion, he let his towel fall onto the chair and leapt into the water, embracing the cool depths without a moment's pause. I lingered on my lounge chair, feigning deep immersion in a book. As he emerged from the pool, droplets cascading from his hair and shoulders, my gaze instinctively lifted to meet his. He caught my gaze, and for a fleeting instant, neither of us dared to look away. "You're not getting in," he said, his tone playful, yet his gaze weighed down with significance. "No," I replied, shaking my head. "I find myself quite content in this place." He glided nearer to the edge, allowing his arms to rest upon the cool, inviting side of the pool. His gaze held mine, weaving a connection I felt almost too personal. The warmth surged through me, not from the sun's embrace, but from the electric tension that crackled in the space between us. "You've been quiet lately," he remarked, his voice now imbued with a gentle warmth. I shrugged, attempting to sidestep the moment, feeling a bit weary. "I suppose." Jason held back, yet his gaze spoke volumes, revealing that he was far from convinced by my response. Eventually, he emerged from the pool, towel in hand, as he began to dry himself off. As he strolled by, water droplets cascading onto the sun-baked pavement, my heart began to race with anticipation. In the stillness that followed his departure, I found myself immersed in a vivid replay of every moment, each detail echoing in my thoughts. There was an undeniable shift in the air, a stirring of events that I found myself unprepared to face. The gaze he cast upon me, the way he hovered close, had shed its innocence, transforming into something deeper. It was intentional, and the heaviness of it was undeniable. The hour was late, and a serene hush enveloped the house. As I ventured into the kitchen in search of water, I sought to refresh my thoughts and find clarity. The air was thick, weighed down not only by the sweltering summer heat but also by the palpable tension that had been simmering for weeks. To my surprise, there was Jason, shirtless and casually leaning against the counter, as he sifted through the contents of the fridge. "You're up late," I remarked, attempting to keep my tone light, even as my voice revealed the unease that stirred within me. He answered, his gaze averted. "Couldn't sleep." He shut the fridge door and pivoted, his gaze locking onto mine. There was something in his expression that seized my breath, a blend of vulnerability and boldness that was entirely new to me. In that fleeting moment, silence enveloped us both. The hush that enveloped us resonated, brimming with unspoken thoughts that lingered in the air, each one heavy with meaning, yet untouched by our lips. The intensity of his gaze enveloped me, his eyes lingering not on the glass I held, but on my very being. "I've been meaning to ask you something," he said, his voice tinged with uncertainty. I tilted my head, attempting to mask the moment as if it were inconsequential. "What is that?" He paused for a moment, then ventured a step nearer. "Have you ever sensed that you're out of place? As if you don't truly belong in your surroundings?" The inquiry took me by surprise. I gazed into his face, caught in a moment of uncertainty about how to respond. "What do you imply?" He spoke, his voice gentle and soft, "as if you were destined for a greater purpose. Something beyond the ordinary. It feels as though you're ensnared in a life that doesn't quite resonate with your true self. In that moment, I found myself at a loss for words. The sincerity of his words, reflecting emotions I had long concealed, left me profoundly unsettled. Before I could gather my thoughts, he moved in closer, so near that I could sense the warmth radiating from him. "Jason," I began to speak, but he interrupted me. "I know this is wrong," he said quickly, his voice quivering with uncertainty. "Oh, I understand I ought to resist these feelings. They persist, and I find myself unable to let go. I have made my attempts, yet I find myself unable to proceed." I gazed at him, my heart racing with a fervor that felt as if it might echo in the silence between us. "We can't," I murmured, my voice a mere breath in the silence. He remained still, his gaze unwavering. "Your presence lingers in my thoughts constantly, though I strive to resist. It seems I am powerless against it." In my gaze, "You're the only one that exists." His words lingered in the atmosphere, unrefined and genuine. I felt the urge to urge him to cease, to depart, to act as if this exchange had never unfolded. Yet I chose not to. I was unable to. As he extended his hand, his fingers grazed my arm with a delicate touch, igniting a sensation akin to flames. I ought to have stepped back, to have expressed that this was beyond reach. In place of that, he remained motionless, allowing the moment to expand into something it was never meant to become. Then it unfolded. His lips brushed against mine, hesitant at first but soon growing more fervent. The kiss crackled with intensity, a surge of emotions that felt both exhilarating and utterly misplaced. I drew back suddenly, tears welling in my eyes. "This can't happen," I declared, my voice trembling with emotion. Without pausing for his reply, I pivoted and exited the room, leaving him there, enveloped in a heavy silence. The following morning dawned with an unbearable weight. The atmosphere surrounding us was heavy with all the words that lingered in silence. I turned my gaze away from Jason, immersing myself in the ordinary tasks at hand, yearning to reclaim a semblance of normalcy. Yet, each time he stepped into the room, my heart raced, and I could sense the gravity of his presence. At breakfast, he sat across from me, an unusual silence enveloping the table. As my husband spoke of his day, his words floated in the air, unaware of the unspoken energy simmering between Jason and me. I nodded in agreement, feigning interest, yet my thoughts drifted away, endlessly revisiting the kiss that lingered in my memory. Once my husband departed for work, Jason remained in the living room, his presence lingering like an unfinished tale. I made an effort to steer clear of him, yet as I strolled by, his voice reached out gently, asking, "Can we talk?" I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. It was clear to me that this conversation was inevitable, a moment I could no longer escape. Silently, I pivoted and settled onto the edge of the couch, ensuring I maintained as much space as I could. With a heavy heart, he started, his voice laced with sorrow. "I ought to have known better. It was never my intention to complicate your journey." I gently shook my head, my hands clasped firmly in my lap. "Jason, the events of last night cannot be allowed to unfold once more. We ventured beyond the boundary." "I know," he said swiftly, leaning in closer. "I understand that it's not right. Yet, I cannot feign indifference to the emotions that stir within me. You hold a place in my heart that no one else ever could." His words pierced my soul with the sharpness of a blade. I yearned to urge him to cease, to grant me solitude, yet the earnestness in his tone rendered it unfeasible. "This feels unjust." At last, I spoke, my voice quivering with emotion. "Neither for me, nor for you, and certainly not for your father." He recoiled at the mention of his father, yet he stood his ground. "I can't help how I feel," he said, his voice a mere breath, laden with unspoken emotions. "There's a connection between us. isn't there? Do not say that you do not. The weight of the truth lingered in the air, palpable and undeniable. I could no longer turn a blind eye to the truth. A sensation washed over me, an inexplicable feeling that defied explanation or reason. Yet, that did not render it just. What we feel doesn't matter, I declared with conviction. Even as my voice trembled slightly, we must release this. Jason, we mustn't subject him to this. He gazed at me, a blend of anguish and resolve in his eyes. I don't want to hurt him, he said. Yet, I cannot feign that this isn't true. You've awakened feelings in me that no one else ever has. Just as I was about to reply, the unmistakable sound of a car gliding into the driveway interrupted the atmosphere. My husband returned home earlier than usual. Jason and I shared a fleeting look of alarm, and in an instant, he rose to his feet, hastily retreating to his room, leaving silence in his wake. As I observed him fade into the shadows of the hallway, a profound ache settled in my chest, an emotion I struggled to articulate. The lines had faded, the borders shattered, and from that moment on, everything would transform forever. My heart was a battlefield, caught in the throes of guilt, loyalty, and an unnamed longing that whispered in the shadows. For the first time, uncertainty washed over me, leaving me to ponder my next move.